Blog Talk Radio.
All right, let us begin. So as I open my line, Doctor, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. How are you?
Welcome. I'm good. Yes, welcome again for another wonderful reading. And like always, what's on the plate tonight for our guest that's listening tonight?
Yeah, well, today, excuse me, I don't know what's wrong with my voice. But today I wanted to talk about the Back to Africa movement, Pan-Africanism, and then, of course, copper-colored people as being the indigenous people of, we'll do specifically with the United States, what we now call the United States Corporation. So those are the three things I wanted to talk about today, starting, of course, with the Back to Africa movement, and then going into Pan-Africanism, and then I'll end by saying something about the autochthonous people of this landmass.
So, wonderful. All right, let us begin. While people are waiting, well, we could go ahead.
Okay. So, over the last couple of weeks, I guess, since Marcus Garvey's birthday, which was August 17th, a lot of conversations have taken place. Now, a lot of people have a lot of respect for him because of what he accomplished and those things that he hoped to accomplish. But now you see there are a lot of people, too many people, saying that he was basically a fraud, and that's very troubling to me. And so it got me thinking about talking about the whole thing about back to Africa, because he was a proponent of going back to Africa. And I thought that's something that we really need to talk about. by really talking about the Back to Africa movement and listing him as one person who felt it was necessary for us to leave this country, but then talking about other people who had a similar idea of what needed to be done. And it's important to understand that there were two movements about Africa. You had the Back to Africa movement that was started by melanated people. And then you also had the American Colonization Society, who wanted to send African people back to Africa, supposedly back to Africa, which ultimately will bring in the whole, bringing information about us or melanated people, copper-colored people as being indigenous to the United States of America. And why is there a need to go back to Africa when we are already home? So I just wanted to name some of the people that were part of the Back to Africa movement, talk a little bit about the people or melanated people who were against the Back to Africa movement, and then move on and talk about, the Pan-African movement. So one of the first people that I want to talk about is Paul Cuffey, whose real name was Kofi, but as Europeans tend to do, they change the name to something that they feel is more easy or easier for them to pronounce and even spell. So Kofi, which I believe, if my memory serves me well, means someone who's born on Good Friday. Someone out there will help me. I wasn't prepared to say what the word Kofi means. I guess I could look that up while I'm on the line.
You mean Kofi? Is it Kofi or Kofi? Is it Kofi or Kofi?
It's Kofi, but they called him Cuffy instead of Kofi, which I don't know how you have problems pronouncing Kofi. His father was Asante, and his mother was a Wampanoag woman from the Massachusetts area. And he was a very prominent businessman during his time on Earth. And so he had several ships. And one of the ships that he had, he used to take people or formerly enslaved people, and probably some enslaved people as well. He took them to Africa. Time, of course, slavery existed all across what we now call the United States, and he wanted to help people who wanted to leave this hellhole. So he used his own money to send people who wanted to leave back to Africa. Now, he himself did not go to Africa to stay, but he did take people there. And if you don't know anything about Paul Coffey or Kofi, it would be, I think, in your best interest to read about him and his accomplishments. Then you had Bishop Henry McNeil Turner, who also wanted people to leave the United States of America if they wanted to, and to go to Africa. And so from his pulpit, because he was a minister, he preached that if you were tired of living in the United States of America, the best thing to do would be to leave this place. You had Henry Highland Garnet, and I'm just going to name, I'm not going to talk about all their accomplishments, but I am going to say a few things about them. You had Henry Highland Garnet, who was also a proponent of the Back to Africa movement. And he wanted people to leave because of this discrimination, the way that we were being treated here in this country. So he started making efforts, to send our people back to Africa. He had Alexander Crummell, another individual who was for the Back to Africa movement, and did what he felt was necessary to convince some people that as opposed to trying to stay in this country and deal with the racism, the enslavement of our people that was going on, it would be best to leave this place. Now, something else that needs to be said about the whole Back to Africa movement, during that particular time, there were European people who were pushing the whole idea of going back to Africa, with giving little or no regard to the fact that many of us were indigenous to this land. If you think about it, some of the people who were pushing the Back to Africa movement, they were educated by European people. And so they were only given one aspect of our enslavement in this country, or one aspect of the fact that there were African people who were brought to this country from Africa to toil in the fields. But because of being educated by European people, they did not push the idea of or promote the idea of us being indigenous to this land mass. During this particular time, you have the Back to Africa movement, but you also have the American Colonization Society, and they wanted to send us to Africa, not because they cared about us, but because they wanted to get rid of the people that they felt were undesirable. So the American Colonization Society, which started approximately 1816, were trying to get rid of sick people, mentally ill people, and the old people primarily. Those are the people that they pushed to try and get to go to Africa. And so they had a meeting, and some of the people that were present at that meeting, where they were promoting the whole American Colonization Society push to send the undesirables to Africa, were people like Henry Clay, Daniel Webster. And I know you should know something about Daniel Webster in terms of the dictionary. Then you have Francis Scott Key, who I guess you know. He was an enslaver and the author of the Star-Spangled Banner, which incidentally was the tempo of the not the lyrics, the melody had been used several times by Francis Scott Key in some of the lyrics that he composed. For instance, to Anacreon in the Heaven was one of the ways that the melody was used, was initially used before using it for the Star-Spangled Banner. And the song to Anacreon in Heaven was about British men, or a song that British men sang in the pubs in Great Britain, where they talked about getting drunk and having sex with loose women. So he thought that because the melody had been used before, when he presented that same melody to be used for the Star-Spangled Banner, that the only thing that the people would have to learn would be the words, because they already knew the melody to the song. But the whole song was based on immoral acts. So he was one of the people that was, he was an enslaver, And he was one of the people that was talking about sending the undesirable melanated people to Africa. You also had George Washington. I know a couple of days ago there was a heated debate about George Washington being better than Marcus Garvey, or what a crazy notion that was. But his nephew, Bushrod Washington, was another individual who was involved in the American Colonization Society and their push to send melanated people to Africa. Something else about George Washington that was important, he was a rapist, he was a pedophile. He was the father of a biracial man by the name of Tom. George Washington would go to his brother's farm or plantation to have intercourse with the women there. One of the women that he had sex with on a regular basis was an enslaved African woman by the name of Venus. And Venus gave birth to George Washington's son, Tom. His wife, George Washington's wife, was infertile. She couldn't have children. So any of the children that George Washington sired came from his rape of melanated women. He also died of syphilis. That's very important to say. There was nothing humane about the individual. At one point, he sold a man for a cask of rum and some molasses. The man was about to be free. His time as being enslaved was up, and so he was going to be free. He had been granted his freedom. So to keep the man from being freedom, he sent him to the Caribbean and traded him for some rum and some molasses. So if that individual was on the line, there was a lot of noise going on during that particular conversation. They should know that there was nothing humane about George Washington, and he enslaved hundreds of people. There's so much more that can be said about George Washington, but I don't want to belabor the point about him. But anyhow, so the men that I just mentioned, Henry Clay, Daniel Webster, Francis Scott Key, Bushrod Washington, they were some of the movers and shakers involved in the whole American colonization scheme. And, of course, you know that they sent people to Liberia, but they also sent people to Sierra Leone, which is something that's hardly ever talked about. And when they sent these what they perceived to be undesirable people, melanated people, to Africa, they also sent European women who were considered to be undesirables there as well. These women were prostitutes who, I guess, old and they were diseased, and they wanted to get rid of them and get them some new models of European women, younger people, I should say, younger women. They sent them along with the melanated people to Africa, and that's something that's not talked about. So the American Colonization Society, although they might try, yes.
Just want to cut to say something. So you're saying that these same no good whores of Europe, the little throwaway women that after they've been sexually used and abused and used and learned, they send them off into the continent. Is there a time frame when this happened? Like, is there any date, particularly if you could, if possible?
In the 1800s, the American Colonization Society started approximately 1816, 1817. So during that time, they sent them. And then you also had the British, in Great Britain, and they were taking their throwaway women and sending them to Africa as well. So it wasn't just what was going on in the United States. It was the British people sending their people as well. And, if I dare say, you could probably look at other European people that are doing the same or did the same exact thing during that particular time period. Okay, so you have two different movements that are existing basically side by side. You had melanated people who were just tired of the abuse, the rape, the maim, all the things that they were forced to, our people were forced to endure in this country, saying enough is enough. We need to leave this place. And I must say that when they before the Back to Africa movement started, a lot of people thought that it would be better to go to Central America than it would be to go to Africa. So that was primarily the push, to send people to Central America. And for some warded notion, they thought that going to Central America and being among the Spanish colonizers would be better than going to Africa and basically dealing with the unknown. Because we're talking about people who, for the most part, had not been born in Africa. Some of them were, but the vast majority had not been born in Africa and knew nothing about the place. And what they did know was, I guess, somewhat frightening to them. During that particular time, Africa was considered to be the dark continent. And so just information about that alone was scary to a lot of people. And so they thought being among the Spaniards in Central America might be a better deal. You also had people, melanated people, who were against the whole Back to Africa movement. And there was one person I guess a lot of people are very familiar with, and that's James Sporton. He became a very rich man for his sail-making ability. He made sails in a way and a method that no one during that particular time period, we're talking about the 1800s, the early 1800s, he could make sails better than any European ever imagined. And so he was very, very rich. Initially, he was for the Back to African movement, but he changed his mind because he began to realize that the Europeans had a movement that basically wanted to get rid of their undesirables, and he didn't want to be associated with that particular movement. So he changed his stance and said, number one, the people that they were trying to get rid of were people who were born right here in the United States of America. And number two, he didn't want them to go over to Africa and suffer in any way. And a lot of them, they did go over there and they suffered. They died of malaria. They weren't accepted by the African people that were there. There was a lot that went on during that particular time. And you know that even today, there's still unrest between the so-called American Liberians and the indigenous people that are living in what we now call Liberia, which was named after James Monroe, President James Monroe. And you can do a lot of research on that. I don't have the time to go through that. And my interests are in so many other places, even to remember some of the stuff that I very easily could quote and give information about is no longer there. There's only so much I can put in my brain at any one particular time, I guess. I don't know. So you have the Back to Africa movement that went on for quite some time. Now, one of the most important prominent individuals or melanated people who dealt with the Back to Africa movement was Martin Delany. Now, Martin Delany, he was a genius. He was on the verge of becoming a doctor, went to medical school, along with approximately 4 other melanated individuals, one of them being a woman, was kicked out not long before he was supposed to graduate because the other individuals who were graduating during that particular time, they didn't want the Negroes, as they referred to them as being, to graduate with them, and they didn't want them in their class any longer. Delaney was a writer. He had a newspaper called The Mystery. He and were at one time colleagues. However, he began to look at some of the things that Frederick Douglass was doing and his whole philosophy about life as being contrary to his, and so they parted ways. Whereas Frederick Douglass was basically in bed with, for want of another word, not that he necessarily went to bed with, he might have, I really don't know, but he was friends with Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, and other feminists, European feminists of that particular time. And so he went against his own people to take up time and energy with these people in supporting their views about slavery, whether your melanated men had the right to vote. Anything that they were for, he was for. Anything that Martin Delany was against, he was for, and I should say anything that Martin Delany was for, he was against. And so they had to part ways. Martin Delany believed that women were just as important, teaching women was just as important as any education that was given to men. So as opposed to just teaching women about cooking and sewing to do in the home, he thought it was very important for women to learn math and science and all the other things that the men were learning during this particular time. Now, initially, Martin Delany was against the Back to Africa movement, but he had a change of heart. He at first thought that going to Central America would have been the better way to go, but he changed his mind. Now, where he differed from a lot of the other people who were for the Back to Africa movement, Martin Delany actually went to Africa, and he visited what we now know as Nigeria. He was among the Yoruba people, and he signed treaties with 2 different kings, the king of Lagos, whose name was Desemo, and the Alake, which means king, Oku Kemu of Abeokuta. And they gave him land that he was supposed to be able to settle melanated people from the United States on. But the British stepped in, and the land that was initially earmarked to give to Delany for the settlement of melanated people in this country was given to the British. So these 2 kings, basically, they were deceptive in dealing with Martin Delany. So the treaties that they signed with him, they revoked those treaties and gave that land to the British instead. And it's important to understand when we talk about the British initially, or we're told that the British were very, they were opposed to slavery, and they did whatever was necessary to get rid of the whole, to get rid of slavery, to stop the importation of Africans into the United States, because they thought it was inhumane for people to be enslaved here. But then we find out that the reason why they stopped the whole trade of enslaved Africans was they had a more lucrative design in leaving the Africans on the continent and then having them mine the natural resources. And so that's what they did. So they considered Martin Delany, and he was also accompanied by a man by the name of Robert Campbell. They considered them to be cogs in the wheel, and that if they were allowed to come into Africa, anything the British had in mind in terms of basically enslaving the people in their own homeland, it would be destroyed, because Martin Delany and Robert Campbell and the others who came into Africa would be telling the people, don't listen to the British. The British speak with forked tongues. You know, any sort of treaties or anything that you do with them, they're going to renege on it. It'll never come to pass. But they will bring in drugs and prostitution and biological warfare and that sort of thing. And so they didn't want Martin Delany there. And so whatever he tried to do during that particular time was it came to a halt. Not to mention the Civil War broke out, and so Martin Delany went back to America, and he looked out for all the melanated men who decided that they wanted to serve during the Civil War. He made sure, to the best of his ability, that they received the same pay as the European men who served during that particular time period. And we do know that the way that the so-called Union treated soldiers was basically, some people say even worse than the way the Confederacy was treating their melanated soldiers. We know that, and we're talking about the Union, as people that were supposedly fighting to end slavery, which is a lie. That never happened. They were more concerned about saving the Union, and because they wanted a cut of whatever was occurring during the Holocaust of enslavement. So if slavery ended, or if if the Confederacy separated from the Union, then they would no longer have the money that they were making by participating in the trade in enslaved Africans. So a lot of the products that the Confederacy was selling or using was made in the North. So you had clothes being made in the North, food being made in the North that was sent to the South, all sorts of things that were profitable to the people in the North would have no longer been a way for them to make a lot of money. You even had a melanated woman by the name of Frances Ellen Harper Watkins, who encouraged the people. She was from Philadelphia, and she encouraged the people to stop buying products made in the South that was sold in the North, among other things. And I'll say a little more about Frances Ellen Harper later. But you have Martin Delany, who's trying to help melanated soldiers during that particular time, during the Civil War. Martin Delaney is writing information that he felt was pertinent to share with melanated individuals, I guess even Europeans. He was against, what is that man's name? The whole survival of the fittest. What is that man's name? I can't think of it right now. So he wrote a book to refute everything that this individual is saying, and his name will come to me in a minute. He also was against, or he wanted to make us a whole, because after being raped and used and abused and giving birth to children that we basically had no desire to have, and you had all of this colorism occurring, he wanted us to become a whole people again. And so one of the things that he was proposing is that dark-skinned men marry light-skinned women and vice versa, so that we would become a uniform in color. Excuse me?
Who was this person that said that telling black men and women to date and marry lighter? Who was that again?
Lighter-skinned people. His name was Martin Delaney.
So, as jet black as Martin Delaney is, he's advocating his people, our race people, to, I guess, engage in what we like to call colorism, where, to be as white as, try to get as light, almost not white, but almost just enough type of complexion, erase your blackness.
No, he was trying to get us to be dark in complexion again. He wanted the biracial people among us to have children with dark-skinned people so that we could all be the same color again. Because during that particular time... Okay. During that particular time, you had these societies propping up that discriminated, like the Blue Vein Society. They discriminated against dark-skinned people. You still have them, like the Jack and Jill Club and that sort of thing, although I think they're now they're more liberal. So if you're a dark-skinned individual, you make a lot of money, you made major contributions to society, they might invite you to come into their organization. But during that particular time, they had the whole, that was the start of the paper bag test. So if you were darker than a paper bag, you were not invited to be a part of their organization. So you had all this going on. And so Martin Delaney felt that if we were all the same color, we couldn't discriminate against one another. Now, he married a biracial woman. Her father was a dark-skinned man, and her mother was an Irish woman. So that might have been, and we don't know, but that might have been his way of believing that if he married this biracial woman, their children would be dark in complexion, and there would be no way for them to be discriminated against or think that they were better than anyone else. And something to say about the Irish during that particular time, they were called green niggers. And they were discriminated against by other Europeans in Great Britain and other parts of the world. And
green
niggers, that's right. And these green nigger women were sometimes used to mate with dark-skinned men, dark-skinned enslaved men, so that the women could be sold as fancy girls and fancy maids, and even the men could be sold for the type of homosexual men that enjoyed having relations with melanated people. So, you had all of this going on during that particular time. So I think we need to look at Frederick Douglass again, because he's getting a lot of praises that, in my estimation, he's not deserving of. Whereas he'll tell people that he freed himself from slavery. That's not true. He went to London and cried on the shoulder of some European woman who ultimately brought his freedom for him. So the information that we've been told about him is not true at all, or, the information that we should know something about, we're not told about him, or we're led to believe that he fled his enslavement. Well, he did flee, but during the 1850s, when they had the fugitive slave law, that's when he went to, and the fugitive slave law being that enslavers in the South could go to the North and retake their so-called property. And Frederick Douglass, fearing that he would be one of the people who would be sent back to his enslavers, he went to London and he was able to get a European woman, to buy his freedom for him. Now, something that could be said good about Frederick Douglass, and especially, there are two things: his whole speech about the 4th of July, or what to the colored or what to the Negroes the 4th of July. I think that that's an important speech, and we should know something about it. Also, during the 1915, I believe it was 1915, World Trade, he was World's Fair. He was the ambassador to Haiti, and so African people during that, or melanated people in this country, who were denied an opportunity to participate in the World's Fair, were able to go to the Haitian pavilion and display their art, read their poetry, play their music, whatever they would have done in their own pavilions, what were denied the opportunity to even set up pavilions, they were done in the Haitian pavilion. Of course, you had Nancy Green, who was making pancakes for, this was a new type of food for the South, or it was a food that had been made in the South, but now they were looking to expand the use of or the making of pancakes. She was allowed to make pancakes at the World's Fair with no problem. And there were other instances. I believe it was one of the melanated inventors, and I don't want to give the wrong name. He was, and maybe a few of them were allowed to showcase their ability. I believe it might have been Lewis Latimer, and I'm not sure about that. I'd have to check that. But, his, I believe it was Lewis Latimer, his light bulb is something that was far superior to that was made by Edison, and was actually made, or he was asked to go to other parts of the world and help them to set up the factories where the light bulbs could be made. His light bulb was far superior to that was made by Edison. So I believe he had a spot at the World's Fair. But don't quote me on that, but I believe it was Lewis Latimer with the light bulb.
Edison is a thief. Thomas Edison is a thief. He still ideals,
Thomas
inventions
Edison.
of I think, and during the time he was around, and I'm not sure which area in America when he so-called acclaimed developed something, his slaves or somebody came up with it and he took the idea.
Oh yeah, he not only stole from melanated people, he stole from European people as well. Anyone that
He
had
stole from
something
Tesla
that he
too.
felt, yeah, he did steal from Tesla. And some people say that he was responsible for the murdering of Tesla. Tesla was supposedly, I believe, thrown out of a window in New York City.
Well, that
where he
depends.
died.
When did Edison die? I got to double check that because
When did Edison die?
Yeah, because Nikola died in 1943. Now I don't know if Tesla was. Edison was still alive around the 90s.
Edison was alive. Maybe it wasn't Edison. It was.
Yeah. And somebody else. Tesla died in the early 40s.
Right. So I'm wrong on that, but it was one of the presidents who wasn't involved, who wasn't president during that time. I don't know. I can't remember, and I don't want to be wrong about that, but one of them was involved in the murder of Tesla.
All right, let's continue.
Okay, so.
One thing, before we continue, I see one person raise their hand. Let me see who this is, and we'll continue.
Okay.
Just hold on a second. Oh, and people, the number calling again is 515-605-9783. I repeat, 515-605-9783. Press 1. Tonight's broadcast is the Unconquered. Readings by Dr. Tolagbe Ogunleye. And I should really number this because I'm not sure. Is this our 5th reading? I think this is our 5th show, Tolagbe?
5th. Yeah, I believe so.
All right, let's make an edit. All once, may I ask who this is?
Hey, what's going on, man? JNYC.
Okay, what's up, Janet? You have a question or comment? Last guess?
Yeah. 2 things that she had brought up. How you doing, sis?
Okay, how are you?
All right, thank you. You brought up 2 good points. George Washington. You know, we have one particular person here that praises George Washington, Sarge, which we always go back and forth. He says that he was his favorite president, and a lot of people here also have spoken about, you know, the injustices and the things that, George Washington is not so great about, right, or wasn't so great about. And I'm glad that you highlighted that. The second thing, or I think it was prior to that, you had said something about the Star-Spangled Banner. I totally agree with you. I think that it's a waste of time for people to be singing Star-Spangled Banner. They might have to do their research on what it is, or even if pledging allegiance to this United States flag. I think it's really stupid and idiotic that, it's a form of indoctrination like other countries that they talk about. Well, they praise, the president, and they praise the flag, and, it's the same shit over here. So I definitely agree on that, if you start doing the research on what it is, the history behind it, it won't be so great as people think it is. And again, I mean, even just, we say the Star-Spangled Banner, but pledging allegiance, the Pledge of Allegiance. People don't do their research on that. Think about it. I mean, yes, this country is great for many things, but it also has its dirt, and it doesn't want to, accept what issues it has and restructure certain things that can be restructured. So I definitely agree, and I sit back and I'm listening and learning and absorbing. That's all. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, a lot of people are saying that if Kaepernick had taken a knee about some issue dealing with homosexuality or European feminism or some other issue, he would never be in the hot water, you might say, that he's in now. People would have been praising him, but because he was saying something about the way that melanated people are treated in this country, nobody wants to hear that, and they want to punish him because of that. And I don't know. We need to separate. We really do, in my estimation. Maybe people are thinking that that's, something that could never be achieved. But we need to think of a way, if not to separate ourselves physically, but to separate ourselves financially, in terms of education. There's so many other things that we can do to separate ourselves from these people. Why do we have to go to their stadiums to play whatever the sport happens to be? Why can't we have our own stadiums? I was thinking of Serena Williams, who was off of one of the courts and wasn't allowed to participate in one of the tennis matches because of a black cat that she wore. Right.
Yeah.
But then they showed a European woman who had on a white cat suit, and no one said anything about that. And so this constantly goes on in all the sports. We could have our own. Remember we had the Negro League baseball teams? Of course, you had European people that, began to realize how lucrative it was, so they decided that they would put together teams during that particular time. But we could even stop that from occurring and just have whatever. Anything that we have, we own it and we operate it. Why even deal with these people? They're not going to change. They decided that Kaepernick, for one, is going to be punished, and there's nothing that you can do that's going to change them from their way of thinking. But if we said we don't need you, we're going to have our own, and we're going to make sure that you don't come and try and sabotage it, because that's what they do. They sabotage whatever we're trying to do. If we put all the measures in place where we could not be sabotaged, we could begin to prosper. Even if you think about what these Koreans and the Vietnamese and the Chinese and the way that they're treating us, just stop buying their products. Stop going to their stores. Create our own. We wouldn't have to deal with all these issues. We wouldn't have no Asian men slapping all over melanated women. They wouldn't do that to a man, but they feel very comfortable doing that to a woman. And I think a lot of it has to do with their own inferiority. As much money as they're making, they say that Asian men are still the most undesirable men on the planet. Nobody wants to deal with them. And it has a lot to do with the
really
tininess. Is that a word? The tininess? the smallness of their appendage. So they're very, very angry. That's where that comes from. They ain't got nothing. And their own women don't want to be bothered with them. Their women would rather be with a European man than to have to endure the paltriness of their own men, most of them. And the only thing they can do is beat up on women. Huh?
They know that. I did not know that.
Yeah, they know that.
I know that.
All the money, they still ain't nothing. And, you see them now, they're involved in the gentrification of our neighborhoods, and they keep on building the skyscrapers taller and taller and taller. But they ain't doing nothing for their manhood. They still ain't got nothing to work with, But we don't need them. They need us. And all these things that they're building and paying all this money from, if we stop supporting them financially, we start giving them welfare, because that's what they're basically getting, welfare. They got welfare when they came in this country, and they're still getting welfare because they're supported by the United States government. If we stop supporting them, they'd have to go back to the jungles of Asia where they came from. They could no longer afford to live here. All the things that they think they have, they would be in Vietnam or Korea or China eating rice and hoping for some vegetables to put on the plate next to whatever it is that they have. We have the power to do that, and so why don't we? But anyhow, so you have Martin Delaney and other people. They're involved in the Back to Africa movement. And then you also had people who were taking advantage of melanated people wanting to leave this country because they were just tired of dealing with the issues of trying to exist next to these racist European people. So you had one man by the name of Chief Sam, and he went around collecting money to try and get people to go back to Africa. But they say that basically he was pocketing most of the money, and the money never went to the organizations that he was supposedly going to start to help us out. And he was from the continent, which is something that we need to talk to in terms of if we start talking about Pan-Africanism. The Pan-African movement during the 1900s, 1920s is when it really began, was people, melanated people worldwide, deciding that enough was enough. They were tired of dealing with the colonizers in Africa and the Caribbean and Central America and South America. And in this country, we were tired of dealing with the racism. And so they started a movement, and you had people from all over the world that became part of the colonization movement. You had a George Padmore, who was part of the Pan-African movement. You had C.L.R. James that was part of the movement. You had women like Addie Hunton. You had so many people that were participating in this movement because they were sick and tired during that particular time. You even had Africans that were tired of dealing with European oppression and colonization. So you had a Jomo Kenyatta, who's best known for his book called Facing Mount Kenya. He became part of the Pan-African movement. And I guess people know about, or if they don't know about it, they should know something about the Mau Mau, although I'm beginning to hear that the Mau Mau was not what we thought it was, and that maybe there were more European people involved in the Mau Mau movement than there were African people behind that particular movement. But the important part is that you had melanated people, African people worldwide, who all at once basically was standing up, and they were saying that enough is enough, and we can no longer deal with this particular issue. Oh, something I wanted to say, when they talk about the whole thing about Africa for the Africans, and they think of Marcus Garvey as being the person who started the whole slogan, Africa for Africans. It was not him. It was actually Martin Delaney. And you also had Edward Wilmot Leiden, who started the slogan, coined the slogan, Black is Beautiful. Although, go back to the 60s, and supposedly that's when that happened. But you have Leiden in the 1930s who's talking about Black is Beautiful. And, of course, if you think about all the negative images of our people during that time, and people like Walt Disney and other people with their caricatures of us, of supposedly dark-skinned people who look more like monkeys than human beings, eating watermelon, having people throw watermelons at us, having the stereotypical image of us eating chicken, wanting chicken, especially fried chicken, using children as alligator bait. You think of all the negative things that went on, all the memorabilia that exists about our people, the derogatory images of the Mammy and the Jezebel and the Buck and so forth. During that particular time, we did need somebody to come up with a slogan that said that we were beautiful. And so you had Edward Wilmot Blyden who coined that particular notion, but you still see us facing those same images of some of us thinking that we're not worthy. We don't look as good as European people, and you could go on and on. Even if you think about Madam C.J. Walker, she was seen as being a hair culturalist, which meant that basically our hair was unruly and needed to be tamed. And so she designs the straightening comb or the teeth on the straightening comb that was being used by Europeans. She decided that she would spaces between the teeth of the straightening comb and combs in general, she would widen the spaces to accommodate our particular hair, and became very rich because melanated women wanted to change their appearance during that particular time. So she made a lot of melanated women very wealthy because of our desire to be considered to be more beautiful. And a lot of people, they don't deal with that whole issue. And I don't have anything against Madam C.J. Walker, but we really need to think about how it's still plagued with the whole thing about our hair. Hair is a very sensitive issue with us. Is it long enough? If it's you're accepted, if it isn't, it's a problem. Having us measure the length of our hair using rulers to measure the length of our hair, and so you got the measurements of the length of our hair. Then you have the paper bag test. So we had all of these issues that were going on and still go on even today, which is one of the reasons why the Asians can be so wealthy. They're making money based on our negative self-image, how we have self-hatred, and they're using our desire to become more beautiful. They're using that to make money. So you have all of these things that are going on during that particular time. So Edward Wilmot Blyden, who was also a very intelligent man, he coins the phrase of black is beautiful. You have Marcus Garvey, who was also part of the Pan-African movement during that particular time. He's looking, not only looking, he's getting melanated people worldwide to be a part of his organization. They said he had 6 million members worldwide who were UNI, Universal Negro Improvement Association members. During that particular time, you also have problems going on where men from the Caribbean were taken to help to build the Panama Canal, and they were being treated like dirt in Panama. So you had, here you had the signs up, for whites only, for coloreds only. In Panama, you had the systems of silver and gold, I believe it was. So The silver was for melanated men and women, and the gold was for European men and women. So you knew if you saw gold, don't go near whatever that was, a fountain, a bathroom, a restaurant. You were not welcome there. So you had these people who were basically dying to build the Panama Canal. They're using dynamite with little regard to whether lives would be lost as they tried to build the canal. And so you had lots of deaths during that particular time until ultimately the Panama Canal was actually built. You had melanated people from all over the Caribbean as well as Central and South America who were being brought into Panama in order to build the canal. So, there's so much going on. It's just really crazy to think about all of the things that happened to us in terms of our treatment and what we were forced to build during that particular time. You have women from the Caribbean being brought into this country to be maids. You had women from this country who were forced to be maids, and they were paid little or nothing. And then they were also subjected to being raped by the men that were living in those homes. You had a writer by the name of Alice Childress. I don't know if you've read her work, but she had one book that was really popular during that time. It was called Like One of the Family, where she talks about how the European women would say that their maids were like one of the family, but in actuality, they weren't being treated like one of the family. They were just workers, basically, who were not paid that much at all to take care of the children, to do the laundry, to cook and clean. And you had a lot of melanated women during that particular time who didn't have any other venues for working for making money available to them, and so they were forced to become maids, and the men were forced to become butlers even. You think about that during the time that we're talking about, the 1930s and 40s, 50s, you had melanated people with college degrees who were forced to work elevators. Those were the only jobs available to them. Can you imagine going to school and you're studying philosophy or whatever? Excuse me?
What time frame was that?
We're talking like the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s.
You know, it's interesting you bring that up because Claude Anderson on a particular YouTube with another guest doctor or scholar. And Claude Anderson speaks about this, that most blacks that got these degrees, they still did not get much work. They were doing the same work. And matter of what has shown 80, 90, wherever, almost a century, is no different from today. We know some people that got the same degrees. Some maybe even go as far as got a master doctor, and they working at lower end jobs.
Right.
So
driving cabs.
It's proven that if we are not creating the economy, they could sit there, shit on us, and make us look lesser than we are now. And worse now, working in these lower end jobs now with these degrees, you're gonna be in debt. Cause back then no one was in debt back then, and usually that's the only thing if you able to get a job maybe. But usually if you had like a doctor or a fancy college degree and you work as a butler, it was bad and humiliating, but at least you weren't in debt. Today you do some work like that, suicide. But continue. I just want to bring that to it.
Yeah, but you think about a lot of them were in debt because they had to pay their bills. They had to pay the mortgage or they had to pay the rent, and take care of the family, buy food and clothing and whatever else they were whatever other bills they had. But can you imagine a man with a college degree and the only job he could get was riding up and down on an elevator all day long, like European people on and off of an elevator? You're forced to wear the white gloves, or you have them as doormen. You have a college degree, but you're the doorman. You're opening the door for Europeans to go in and out of these fancy buildings, and you're just as good, if not better than they are, but the only position available to you is being in some subservient role, or playing some subservient role. And you're right, it still goes on today. It hasn't changed. Where you have a lot of us, we're paying all of that money to go to college, getting in debt, but the jobs are not available. And so they even, they're not even prepared to get the jobs where the money, where they could make the most money. So then after getting the degree, you find out you don't have enough education, or you don't have the right type of education. So you end up driving a cab, working at a fast food restaurant, all the demeaning jobs that our people are still forced to work in order to try and take care of the family. So you're right, that hasn't changed at all. As a matter of fact, in some instances it might be worse than it was.
It is worse.
And
the reason why I'm saying it's worse, and the reason why I'm mentioning this to you right now, because you brought that up, it's worse now because, they had some debt, but it's not like the debt that we witnessing today. This is a totally different debt now. This is like the debt that people are on now, depending on how far they go into education, and let's say they're able to get work or can't find work, that this debt they cannot pay. They will have to default. They will have to have their credit fucked up. All the above.
Right.
Back then,
and you can't file bankruptcy.
No, you cannot.
So what you're saying, I interrupted you.
Yeah, so think about it now. It's twice as worse now. Because back then, and think about it. Our people had a decent illiteracy back then in the 30s. It's just when we look at going on somewhere around the 70s, the illiteracy started to go down because we now integrate with their school system. So what they now willingly dump our people down. So now when you leave high school now, you're very lucky if you're reading or doing basic arithmetic at level. So you're more not only backwards, but you're completely cut out of the competition, which really was now intended to do it. Now, a lot of people will get pushed back hearing that. I don't give a fuck, but that's my opinion.
Right.
My statement.
And you even think about it, then we have the media working against us. So you have that show like Family Matters. I think that's the show with Urkel on it, where they make him out of this nerdy individual, but the way he looks, the type of glasses he wears, he's socially
unattracted.
Awkward. So
unattracted.
You have men looking, you said, well, unattractive, right? So you have men looking at that image and saying, I don't want to be like that. So then, of course, they go to school. I'm even thinking about that now. If you look at the types of book bags that you're going to find, most of the men taking off to school or using when they go to school will be these small little tiny bags that you can hardly fit a bag of potato chips in. I know at one point, even in Philadelphia, they knew that men, the young men or the males were not bringing home books. So then the children had two sets of books. One they used when they were in school, and one they kept at home so that they could do their work, thinking that would cut down on the number of students who weren't doing their homework. But they had to cut that out. They said it became too expensive, number one, to keep two sets of books for all the students because they weren't being taken care of. I actually even witnessed children throwing books out the window And maybe they should have been thrown out the window for all the lies that were in those books. They never told the truth about too much of anything, So problem was we should have been there. The churches should have been there to open up the schools, and it shouldn't have had anything to do with your particular religious affiliation. Schools should have just been built, or should at this point be built by the churches in our community to educate our children and educate them correctly. But that is not happening. Yeah, so you have these images that no one wanted to associate themselves with, and that's also attributing to our lack of overall success in schools. There's so much that's working against us. It's really disheartening if you think about all the stuff that we're in. But to get back to, because I want to mention something about W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey before, the conversation changes. But, we were talking a couple days ago, and people were calling Marcus Garvey a fraud and talking about he didn't do this. He took money for people for a ship that he didn't even own. If he was promised that he was going to be sold, I believe it was, what was the name of the ship? The Sojourner Truth, I think was the name of the ship. I can't remember which one it was.
The Black Star Liner.
Wheatley. No, the Black Star Line was the whole, all of the ships. But then they each had individual ship names, and I believe it was Phyllis Wheatley. He named it the Phyllis Wheatley, and it's saying that he had no right to do that because he didn't own the ship. But if someone makes you an agreement that the ship will be sold to you, and then you go around raising the money, that doesn't make you a fraud. But people were trying to say that he was a fraud. But the thing that I want to talk about is that W.E. Du Bois was one of the individuals who was against Marcus Garvey. He called him a monkey, a gorilla, called him black, ugly, you name it. And if that wasn't worse enough, Garvey was trying to go to Africa and set up businesses or continue to do business with the people on the continent. And one of the people who kept Garvey out of Africa was W.E.B. Du Bois. Du Bois convinced Harvey Firestone, to go to Liberia and push Liberia,
With the help of Henry Ford, we went to visit Henry Ford, the guy who made Ford.
Henry Ford, okay.
Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Firestone, the land that was promised to Garvey was given to Harvey Firestone so that he could set up his business selling rubber that was ultimately made into tires. And that was Du Bois convincing Firestone to give people an alternative to Marcus Garvey. And Garvey didn't go, but he had some of the members of the UNIA go to Liberia to begin the work of establishing a settlement for melanated people from other parts of the world. And they would not allow the men to disembark. And nobody talks about that. And it was not long after Garvey was, and his men were kept out of Africa, Garvey's movement began to collapse. Firestone, with the help of Du Bois, was giving a 99-year lease on the world's largest rubber plantation on land that had been promised to Marcus Garvey by the king, one of the kings, one of the Liberian kings, whose name was C.B. King, and maybe he wasn't considered a king, but whatever his position was as president, C.B. King betrayed the trust that Marcus Garvey had with him. And that was basically, they say, the end of the Garvey movement. And it's ironic that W.E.B. Du Bois would die, would go to Africa and then die in Ghana when he caused so much havoc on not only Garvey, but other prominent melanated men during that particular time period. And he bragged about his French ancestry and was very proud of his skin color and laughed at dark-skinned people. So we need to look at that because, you know, the other day they were talking about, well, how come Garvey didn't go to Africa? No, he tried to go to Africa, but all the efforts he made were thwarted by Europeans as well as W.E.B. Du Bois. And they put together, W.E.B. Du Bois was one of the people who put together a campaign which they called Garvey Must Go, to try and keep people from following him. And then he was accused of fraud. He was not the first melanated man, I'm talking about Garvey, who was accused of fraud. That was a common theme. Anytime melanated people tried to make advances, they were immediately committed of some sort of federal crime, because he was committed of a federal crime, put in jail, and then told that if he wanted to leave jail, that the thing that he needed to do was to leave the United States immediately. He went to Jamaica for a while. He was not treated very kindly by the people there, and ultimately ended up in London. And that's the theme that, you know, occurred over and over again with prominent men. If you can't get them to do what you want them to do, then you kill them. And that still goes on today. You know, you see how much money you can give them. If they don't want money, do they want sex with European women? If they don't want that, and there's no other way to get them to come over to your side, you just kill them and you get rid of them. And there's so many instances of that occurring. You have a Malcolm X who couldn't be co-opted, and so they said kill him. You know, and you look at some of the men who were co-opted, and they're still alive to tell the story. They found out what their weaknesses were, and they were allowed to thrive, to live. Trying to think of anything else I could say about Garvey that's important. I know he thought of us as being a mighty race of people who need to realize our greatness. And if we realize just how great we are, we could change our condition basically overnight. But because we lack self-assuredness, we fumble and fall. Oh, something else I wanted to say when I was talking about the school district, and then I think we should open it up to questions. The school district of Philadelphia has come up with a manual for new teachers who are having problems understanding what the students are saying, the melanated students are saying. So they have a manual where the language, I don't want to say language, the slang that the students are using, and they tell them exactly what it means. So that when these European teachers go into the school system, if they're having problems understanding what the children are saying, they can go to the manual, look up the word, and they'll know exactly what the children are saying to one another. And I laughed because I said, as soon as they learn that slang, the children will be off and running with something else. You know, it's even like with our culture in general. You think about over 40 years now, about 40 years ago, when we were doing break dancing, where you'd see men and I guess it started basically in New York and the Bronx and whatnot, where they would walk with cardboard underneath their arms, and they would have these competitions where they would dance to whatever music was playing. Here we are now, 40 years later, and the Europeans and the Asians are just beginning to do breakdancing. So it took them 40 years to get that together. So now you have the same thing with this language. They think that they got the language. And as soon as the students realize that these European people are, or have this manual teaching them what they're saying, the slang is going to change. Is there someone on the line?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Did you hear that? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay. And something else that needs to be said before you go on, and I'm not going to touch too much on it because you have so many people out there.
One thing, before you say, let everybody know we got 23 minutes left before we go overtime. I'm going to now open the line. So if y'all been patient with it, press 1 now for all questions and comments right now. We have 23 minutes on the live stream, and we have an hour of overtime. We're not going to the overtime show yet. So call now, 515-605-9783. I repeat, 515-605-9783. Press 1. All right, you go ahead.
Okay, so the only thing that I want to say in terms of the whole issue of us being indigenous to this landmass, and we are, and the number of people that were removed from the continent of Africa is not what we've been told that it was. Some people say it was less than 2% of people were brought here from Africa. Some people say it was less than 20% that were brought here from Africa, and that the rest of us are indigenous to land. If we don't believe it, we should talk to an elderly person in our family, an elderly relative who more than likely will talk about their native, I won't say native, their autochthonous, being autochthonous to this land or being indigenous to this land mass. Even in terms of the actual number of people that were brought here, now they're saying that 12 million Africans were removed from the continent and not brought just here to the United States, but out of that 12 million, many went to Brazil and other parts of Central and South America, as well as the Caribbean, like Jamaica, Bahamas, Cuba, and so forth. 12 million. Whereas when you talk to some other people, they'll tell you somewhere between 250 and 500 million people were removed from the continent, which is crazy, because if that many people were removed from the continent, number one, where are the ships? Number two, how come they didn't come and get us? So it's a lie. And there were so many nations of melanated people here. If you go back and you read the primary sources, sources, primary sources, the Europeans in the 18th and 19th century and the latter part of 17th century, they will tell you that when they got here, as well as Christopher Columbus, that was 15th century, they will tell you that the people throughout the Americas were copper-colored individuals. So we need to begin to really do the research. Everything that we thought we knew about our existence, or with information we've been given about our existence over the last 400 or 500 years, we need to throw that out and start again, because we have been lied to. Like Malcolm said, we have been had, we have been bamboozled, and so we really need to do the research. And I think that that's important. That's all I'm going to say on that. And more information comes out every day.
All right. So no further ado, I'm going to start from the top bottom. So I'm now opening lines for question and comment. So the first line, all once. Am I asked who I'm speaking to?
It's Taz.
Question and comment?
You already know. So when let me see what all I can remember from this rhetoric she was spewing. So in reference to the USS Phyllis Wheatley, that Marcus Garvey did not own, the little down payment that he put down on it didn't secure the ship. Therefore, he had to draw a fake version on the ship of a pamphlet to send it out. He did not use an actual photo of the ship in question. So to lay out some type of narrative as if he was buying the ship and everything was kosher, but they pull it back at the last minute, is a lie. He doctored the photo of the ship itself. So it,
like I said, a question, not a long comment. And you're running on the same narrative that was been answered like 2, 3, 4 fucking nights ago. And tonight, we've gone a little further from good old Marcus Garvey to other things. So, I'm going to let you take a little time out. Next question. All once. Who's this? All once? All once going once? All once going twice? You may sit back down.
Hello?
Yeah. Oh, yeah?
Hello?
Yes, hello?
Yeah, what up? What up, man? This Q, man. So, I have a couple of comments, man, right? This Q.
Go ahead.
Hello?
I refer a question,
I have a couple of...
Go ahead. One comment.
All right,
because we have the line long, Q.
All right, I got it. So you know what, man? I'll pass, man. Go ahead.
Come on, you might as say, brother, because you're using
I'm
airwaves.
pass, man, because I got more of a comment than I do a question, so I'll pass at this time. I'll wait until the overtime.
Well, all right. Well, let me hear the comment anyway, because the lady could probably answer it. So go ahead, because I don't want to open the line and then let something just go out your head. Just speak your mind.
Well, she said that the question that I have is that she said she made a platform that W.E.B. Du Bois was the one who actually sabotaged and ruined Marcus Garvey's attempt at being able to complete what he started out on. That's asinine. That's not true at all. It was actually, and here's the reason why I say that. It was actually Marcus Garvey who actually came in and stole the whole Pan-Africanist movement from W.E.B. Du Bois. And here's why I tell you that, because it talks about the beginning of the conflict, and it talks about a point when Marcus Garvey in the conflict in 1918, Du Bois wanted to attend a peace conference in Paris, right? And Marcus Garvey attempted to send 3 of his individuals over there to ruin that peace conference that W.E.B. Du Bois was going to attend. It didn't happen because Marcus Garvey's people could not get visas in time. So, it's pinholes, and I don't want to beat and bash, what the lady was saying, but I just think that the correct information has to be put out, right? And again, it's not just about Garvey, and I understand that. So, it talks about how he failed to achieve, to make the event in Europe, and in 1919, he was called on to attend an audience, to hold an audience, to show the complete redemption of W.E.B. Du Bois for interfering, which turned out to be a serious accusation made by no other than Marcus Garvey. Remember, W.E.B. Du Bois went to Jamaica and met with him. Shortly after that, Garvey came over to the United States of America, went to the headquarters of the NAACP to invite W.E.B. Du Bois out to an event that he was holding. He respectfully declined it very politely, and that's when Marcus Garvey set out to tear down and destroy W.E.B. Du Bois. So history at that fact is inaccurate. And I'll yield the floor at this time and go back on mute, man.
Okay, so what can we say about the NAACP? Good organization. Did it help us? How about their silence with the whole issue of lynching, the Scottsboro boys, and other things that occurred? What has the NAACP ever done to us? Who started the NAACP? Was it melanated people, or was Springard and all the other Jews who started the NAACP? Are we going to use them?
It was a collaboration.
Excuse me, I didn't interview.
When you asked me a question, I was trying to answer the question.
Excuse me, I had not finished. Okay. Now, if you want to support the NAACP, fine and dandy. That's your business. I don't. And they haven't done anything for us. In all the years that organization has existed, what have they ever done that has helped our people? Name one thing.
Not a fucking thing. Not a fucking thing they done. And they've been founded by other Europeans for one purpose and one purpose only, to stifle black progress and to keep watch of any movements. Remember,
right. And who was involved in that?
And existed. What? Go ahead. Sorry. You about to say something?
No, I was going to say, who was involved in that? W.E.B. Du Bois. Huh?
Yep.
And you're going to talk about Du Bois, and you're going to choose Du Bois over Marcus Garvey? Marcus Garvey, Du Bois, all the negative things he said about Garvey, all the things he did to sabotage his movement. I think a lot of what Du Bois did was out of jealousy. You know that Marcus Garvey had a meeting at Madison Square Garden, and he drew thousands of people to come out and hear him speak. Du Bois, did Du Bois ever have anything like that happen?
Nope.
I'm waiting.
And Doctor, before I open it, and mind you, did W. Bois have a little conflict with Booker T. Washington during a time when these two men said what direction black people should be taking, and Booker T. said that you should be self-sustained and do for self, while W. Bois said go to school, get highly educated, and maybe the white man will like you by your intellect. But no, so you real people build shit, not by what the fuck you know. Because what the fuck you know don't build shit. Last time I checked, a lot of people that are book smart, but they're not building a fucking thing.
That's
but just building rhetoric. So let me open this man's mic and I'll move on.
Yeah, and he had that whole thing about the Philadelphia Negro.
That's fine. You asked me a question and then I was muted. Yes, I have. You asked me a question and then, as usual, you went into filibustering because I was not allowed to answer the question. I'm simply going off of historical accounts as well. So, and to sit here and make the accusation, well, if you want to support the NAACP and what have they done for us, what did the UNIA and Marcus Garvey movement ever do for black people? Let's not forget that when Marcus Garvey was at the height of his movement and they burnt down Black Wall Street down there, the only thing he did was the 20,000 people that he gathered in New York, in New York City. The only thing he did at that time was send a letter. That he took no action. He didn't go there to see. He didn't go there to speak. He didn't go there to do any of that.
Did Du Bois go there?
At that particular time, Du Bois was an afterthought because as you put it, Marcus Garvey was the man. He was the man at center stage at that point in time.
No. What did Du Bois do?
The same thing that Marcus Garvey did.
Wrote a letter.
Let me stop. Let me hold you right there. So that means the boys didn't do nothing as well. Moving on. Next caller. Let me check. And let y'all know we got 10 minutes before we go overtime. Call now is 515-605-9783. I repeat, 515-605-9783. Press 1. All once. May I ask who I'm speaking to?
Big J Triple X. Now I'm kind of complex here. See, if we are talking about the truth should not be based upon opinion. The truth should be based upon for what it is. So Marcus Garvey had beef with every black leader. But let's forget about the Bowles and them. He beefed with every black leader of that day. So how can y'all sit there and only focus on the NAACP when he did this to everybody else? And let me also say this too. We got to stop trying to practice propaganda and start talking about truth here. I'm being serious because that's really the problem. You got people just spreading rhetoric and not truth. That's all I'm going to say. And can the host please explain to me what happened in Arizona with the state of Arizona? You know what? Never mind. I'll leave that alone. I'll back away.
You mean Kenny?
I'm
that
interested
the one on Wednesday?
to hear what you have to say about Arizona. I don't understand what you're saying about Arizona. Is he still there?
Yeah, Big J. What about Arizona, sir?
No. It's all right. I'm not gonna bring that up. I'm not gonna bring that Arizona thing up. Never mind. You go ahead. Go ahead.
Are you talking about the boys in Arizona?
No, ma'am. It's all right, man. I'm forgetting about that.
I got you, Big J. I know what you're talking about.
I was just interested because, I taught at the University of Arizona. So I was wondering, were you going in that direction? Am I teaching there? Or were you talking about the boys in Arizona?
No.
Hello.
I opened a new line. 1 second, sir. No, he's talking about another co-host because I guess it's something in the chat room they were discussing with each other. So he wanted to talk to another person he was chatting in the chat room. That's nothing to do with tonight's show. All right.
Oh, okay.
All one. May I ask who I'm speaking to?
Oh, this is Miss Lady.
How you doing, Miss
Hello.
Lady?
Hello.
I just want to thank the lady, the educator, for sharing all of this wonderful information. And her delivery is very respectful. It's calm. She's not yelling. She didn't come in with an aggressive, hostile attitude. I know all information that's possible to be known, and none of the rest of you know anything. This speaks to professionalism. And Gary, when you talk about education, this is the difference. Listening to this educated lady versus a lot of other people that call in, there is a market difference. So I wouldn't frown on the education at all.
Okay.
A formal education where you have to learn how to research, write, speak, debate in a formal setting where there is an exchange of ideas and not diatribes and arguments delivered in a very unprofessional manner. So thank you, Madam. I appreciate your delivery tonight. It's a very refreshing from what's been going on over the past couple of weeks.
Oh, thank you so much. And it's been so long that I even had the opportunity to talk about this information that we're talking about tonight. So I'm a little rusty, and I apologize because working on so many other things until I put all this information basically on the back burner. So I apologize.
And she wants to share information. It's not about her ego or scoring points and saying, I know this and you don't. You know, she doesn't have the need to assert that. She's comfortable in her skin and with her knowledge base and who she is. She doesn't have to prove anything. And it makes sense for a wonderful, you want to listen and you want to learn more, you know, instead of turn off. So thank you, madam.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
And I want y'all to know, when I bring the good doctor, remember, she is an educator herself in the study of history and other things. So it's not like somebody just bring on here that, you know, she has gone through the institution, mind you. But this is a little different from most of y'all know. This is going beyond the institution. See, a lot of teachers that people sit down on an everyday basis listen to and really understand. Most of them, they are book smart and they do research, but it's only to the status quo. We deal with information in books that people don't look at, you know what I'm saying? And we could discern about even what is true or false, or we have our different views about certain people, you know what I'm saying? Even Marcus Garvey, and mind you, I have read his life lessons and the few books that he came up with, especially the Big Black Book that deals with more of his history than anything else. And, you know, I kind of respect the elder during his time and what he has done, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly, you know what I'm saying? Because anything you try to do is not always going to go your way. But one thing is evident, that he tried and made the greater sacrifice. This is something that we miss out, the greater sacrifice for the better good. We don't really conceptualize. We just look at it and say, oh, he took money from people. Oh, he fight his members. Oh, he forged. He did some mail fraud. The United States government kicked him out. You know what I'm saying? And we all know the United States government never respected black people. But we take its side nonetheless. So we insane. Tell you that right. We just insane. You know what I'm saying? And so that the government did us a favor. But notice the government never favored black people. Last time I checked, I could be wrong. Am I wrong, Doctor? I don't know. I'm missing something here.
No, I don't think that they've ever favored us.
Yeah, so
and Marcus Garvey, he was a man, you know, but he did more than a lot of and he did more than a lot of people have done. You know, you even think about his writing, the number of books that he wrote, his organization, his magazine, The Negro World. He was giving us an opportunity, or the people during that particular time, of having their voices heard. Can we think of anybody else during that particular time who gave those voices to be heard, to give people an opportunity to write? Of course there were other people. I'm not going to say he was the only one, but he was definitely someone who contributed to our knowledge about what was going on during that time period. Anybody can go now and get copies of the Negro World and read it. You can go and get the writings of Marcus Garvey and read that. Go and look at Harvey Firestone and what he did in Africa, the way those people were being treated, who were getting the rubber from the trees in order to be made into tires. And he was not the only one. Think about the number of Africans who died with what was that? I was going to say it's not asphalt. What's the other one that recently we've been banned from using in building? Oh goodness, what is the name of that stuff? I was going to say where if you find it in a home, they have to bring in people to remove it and wear masks and all sorts of things. Asbestos. Thank you. All right. Think about the number of African children who were forced to work in that stuff, and they weren't told about the danger. How many people's lives were ruined because of colonization by the British
Tolagbe?
and other Europeans?
Hello?
Yes. Yes.
We have 30 seconds. Call in now. 30 seconds. 515-605-9783. 515-605-9783. You have 24 seconds, and then the show's going to go in overtime. All right, continue. And I'm going to open one more line. I open your line, Shabazz. Give me 1 second, Kyle. You kind of keep dropping on in, so be patient.
Okay, bro.
No, go ahead. I was just saying something about asbestos. But you think of cocoa and coffee and all the things that were removed from Africa. Now you would think that cocoa leaves are made somewhere in Europe, which is a lie. Even if you think about water, what's that company, Albion? They make water. I don't know if I'm saying that word right. But this is a high-priced water that we buy over here. What is it called?
What's
it's
the
not
first
Albion.
letter?
I think it's A. Albion? Or is it Evian? Albion, Evian?
It might be Evian.
Okay, that water comes out of Africa, and they take it back to Europe and they bottle it up and make you think that it was water that was deep in the wells of France, and it's not. You know, and they even tell you that after World War II, I believe it is, because of the bombing and the number of chemicals that would drop throughout not only France but other parts of Europe, that people had to resort to drinking wine. You know?
Wow.
But now they're trying to
poison.
pass that off as being,
That's poison. And when you're drinking just wine, that's what Europeans drink. So when you deprive the body of actual water, you deprive it of oxygen and your organs. Wine is a poison. When you drink it, consume it.
You know, and the same thing was done over here when the Europeans first came. They began to destroy the water sources, urinating in it, defecating in it, throwing urine and feces in the water and all the other stuff that they were throwing into the water until the people couldn't even drink the water. So they resorted to drinking wine and whiskey and other types of alcohol. They drank that in lieu of drinking the water because they had begun to destroy. We're talking about in the 17th century. They were destroying the water and other natural resources here. So now we're seeing the effects of this going on for such a long time, you know, but the same exact thing was occurring with, you know, turn on most TV shows. What are they going to show you? European people pouring wine, drinking wine, you know, and we're following with them thinking it's okay. But I heard, and I don't know if this is true, but I heard when I was growing up that a wino is worse than an alcoholic. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe somebody will tell me, you know, but, you know, we would laugh at people that drank too much wine, and it seemed like they were destroyed quicker than someone who was consuming alcohol. You know, but again, the point is that we've been led to believe that products that were actually the resources or the natural resources came out of Africa, was taken to Europe, and then they turned it into chocolate and water and whatever else, other things that came out of Africa. They took those things, and now they claim it to be their own. They've even taken over parts of Africa, so they no longer even have to deal with the people talking about the land belongs to them, because now they've taken the land. So that they, you know, they pay the labor and pay them very little. And most of the money goes back to Europe.
So cruel world we live in. But let me open the next line. 626. Let me ask someone speaking to.
Hey, Garrett. Hey, what's going on?
Joshua.
Yeah, what's up? Hey, I just want to say that I thank the sister for coming on again, you know, and sharing her information, which she has come to know. And I thank her for that. I just want to say, you know, something briefly about this whole Marcus Garvey saga that just won't rest. And like I said, it all comes down to who, sister. It all comes down, as far as I'm concerned, on whether how you like Marcus Garvey or not. That's basically what it comes down to. I think we have people who just don't like who just don't like him, and that's fine. And I'm not trying to make you like Garvey. I'm not trying to make you love Garvey or nothing like that. Okay. So in that case, I have to move on with that conversation. The second conversation, W.E.B. Du Bois. We got to put him in his in his proper context. Du Bois did a lot of damage to Garvey. Now I know some, and I don't know how we come up with the idea that Garvey did damage to Du Bois, because Du Bois didn't even get along with Booker T. Washington, and Washington was saying some of the same thing that Garvey was saying. To say that Du Bois was the saint is crazy. Now Du Bois, he made some good points in his lifetime, but again, he did for some reason or another, he had a problem with those particular black males and women, black women and black men at that time, who talked about do for self. He had an issue with them, and I don't know what that was about. His issue was that we go to school, get an education, but we did that, and that has not worked. We'll give that. Black people, and that's why I say our problem is not education anymore. Our problem is accumulating wealth and making wealth for ourselves. That's our issue, is money. That's our problem. That's one of our issues. So that's what I say about W.E.B. Du Bois. He made some great things. As someone who's been around scholars, I'm able to. Well, one thing I learned about scholars, being around Dr. Clark, etc., and those particular men, I had to take what was not necessarily bad about a person, the errors and their mistakes. I had to be able to blend those into the person's life and understand this is what their life was. It wasn't always great, it wasn't always pretty, but they did what they had to do at that particular time. So in fact, to move forward, and that's the whole thing too. And so again, let's stop acting like Marcus Garvey had this army that could march into Tulsa and fight. He didn't have an army. He had an organization of men who he was trying to get into military state mind, but those men were not. They didn't have weapons or anything looking to go out and talk and fight. That's absurd. They didn't have that. Okay, I mean, so let's have a realistic view on history properly, instead of having an ideal of the fact that if I don't like that person, I just don't like them. And to me that's childish. But again, like I said, thank you, for coming on. And I want to add one thing to Marcus Garvey during the Renaissance period, because you spoke on that, sister. In Harlem, that was a very interesting time in Black life and the Harlem Renaissance, because there was a lot going on. Matter of fact, I want to add in, Jerry, I'm going to step back. The Black Jews of Harlem at that particular time were very instrumental in Harlem. Matter of fact, one of the brothers' name was Rabbi Arnold, Hosea Arnold. He was a member of the Garveyite movement. Matter of fact, he wrote the song. Their song was written by this particular brother at that time. And so that was a very interesting time during the Harlem Renaissance in Harlem, man. That was and I wish if I could go, travel back in time, I wish I could visit the Harlem Renaissance, because they had some brilliant black men and women at that time in Harlem. So that's all I got to say. I'm done.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Garvey, he did more than a lot of people did, and you have to also realize that during the whole thing with Tulsa, by that time Garvey was being investigated by the federal government.
Yeah.
How much could he have done?
Yeah. Nothing. Period. Yeah, that's the bottom line with that. That was 1920, 26. Yeah, I think that was 1926, 27, when that whole thing had broke out. So that's just, that's how I look at that whole thing. But I'm pretty much just I'm done discussing with people who in some cases who don't appreciate scholarship. I don't want to be dealing with people who don't have scholarship. I got my own opinion, but sometimes I try not to have my own opinion too much. I try to use the historical data that I got.
And I can say this, that I can appreciate your efforts into bringing people onto the show, and of course, Brother Gary, Chaos, and those other hosts that have a reach to bring those people on that have scholarship. Those people, this is where you find the importance of education, because inside the definition of education, it speaks about it being systematic. So, of course, we've had to go through their system to show ourselves approved. But the thing is that while we've acquired the knowledge, that we not only have a Eurocentric view, as people do once they go through a Europeanized school, but now we're utilizing the education to have your own African worldview or your own African perspective to see life. And once you see life, you won't be as conforming as what we see from a lot of Negroes. You will be one that is revolutionary. And I think a lot of times that's why, because so many black folks are afraid. You have so much of the fear mechanism that is put upon us. We're afraid to even speak against the white man. We're even afraid to acknowledge that that's the person that has been kicking our ass. You understand? We are afraid. And therefore, you will have someone that now supports and upholds a rhetoric that will speak negatively about those of our brothers and sisters that have worked hard to get us out of this situation that we are currently still in. You understand? So rather than us speaking highly of them, rather than us having a culture being supportive of them, you understand? Christopher Columbus is still promoted. You understand? They still love the fuck out of him and have a Christopher Columbus Day. But this motherfucker has all type of warp shit that he did. King James. So much so where the white people love this motherfucker and Negroes love him. But really, he was a Queen James. You understand? He really was a fag. But we don't, you same Negroes don't down talk the cracker, but you want to find any little speck, any little piece of way that is tarnishing to the legacy of, us as black people when we're already struggling. We don't have many heroes and heroines. You understand? We don't have many, so why the fuck would you spit on that legacy? Even I don't agree with Martin Luther King's nonviolent movement. I don't agree with that shit. But I am still willing to look as a person that's looking to pick up the pieces. I'm looking at his model. I want to look at the stuff that he did that he was able to implement. How he was able to get black people to walk somewhere. You can't even get Negroes to, come together for any reason nowadays. But the fact that this brother was able...
Can I say this right quick? Let me say this right quick. And as far as Dr. King is concerned, again, this is why I say, being around the scholars, which I had the opportunity and the blessing to be around those scholars at times, they got me to understand that you got to look at the whole totality of a historical figure, not just half of it, the whole thing.
Right.
So here's the thing. Dr. King woke up at the end, and he started talking about what? Compensation. He said, what? They give the white farmer a check, but they don't give us a check. So we got to march down and ask for a check. So that's the Dr. King that I can say, God, man, this is he did 360-degree wake-up call and say, hey, they owe us. And that's where I'm coming from. And again, that's why I say our issue, our blackness issue is money, man. And until we get that together, it's going to be bleak for us if we don't get financial power.
And see, Yahshua, the main thing that lies in the money that we got to have before the money is appreciation. If we don't have appreciation for our yesterday, if we don't have appreciation for the zenith of our arts, you know what I'm saying, in the yesterdays, we can't appreciate our dollar. It goes back to having respect. In order to respect our dollar, we got to respect ourselves. But when we don't have any substantial culture that is going to help us respect ourselves, you understand, guess what we do with our dollar? Because the culture encourages you to go out there and do some of the dumbest shit in the world. So when you get your money, you're going to do just that.
refrain from all of the cursing. There's
I'm sorry, sis. I'm sorry for you. I'm sorry. But just the reality is that, we spend a lot of money on killing ourselves. We spend a lot of our people say they hate Trump. They don't like Trump, but the very products that we fill our household with, they coming from Trump and his buddies. That's just the reality. So I think us appreciating who we are, and this is what Marcus Garvey taught us, doing for yourself, realizing that you yourself are the beauty that you're waiting on, that you yourself are the hero or the savior that you're waiting on. If you're going to depend on anybody, it should be the collective of people that look like you, not only here in America, but worldwide. This is a rare rhetoric. This is a rare rhetoric. You understand? So I know anybody that's promoting something like that, they can't. You talking about the dude talking about he's an agent. How so? Agents are still gonna live good. They're going to promote a rhetoric, not that's going to be substantial to black people coming up. Why he didn't get to make it to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the brother in New York? The government was assisting in what was going on in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Is the big picture. White supremacy, the KKK, like Marcus Garvey said, the KKK is the spiritual essence of America. This is the reality. This is why these crackers are still in blue, in the badges, and they still are killing our people. And then our dumb behinds are wondering, what is going on? Man, America is working greater than it has ever worked. We're the only one that have been duped because they gave you a black president. Now they tricked you and they sucked you back in and had us believing in it once again, but we still got the Flint water crisis going on. So how much do they give a damn about us? When they can spend billions of dollars on stupid shit, you can spend some money on getting some type of better water system. We shouldn't be talking, but when you're in a place that does hold high to monopoly, capitalism, this is why, like Malcolm X said, only a fool would allow his oppressor to teach his children. But this is what our children are doing. They're going in through their system, becoming educated. So now they're grooming themselves in the image of the European. So whatever the European is looking at as being successful, that's what we're doing now. As not that we're getting education, it's more of a social education we're getting as well. You understand? It's not just only books that you're learning when you go to school. No, it's a social environment that you're getting that they look to, put on groom our children with. I'm sorry.
No, I want to say this too. I want to let the sister talk because that's why she's here.
Hey.
But let me say this right quick about understanding when you dislike someone, you never hear the whole totality. So this thing, by me not disliking Dr. King in the beginning of my consciousness of me being centered, I would have never. If I didn't open my mind up to hear more of Dr. King, I wouldn't know he said that. I wouldn't have known that there are speeches that Dr. King made that if white folks heard them, they wouldn't like him. So if I didn't have the fortitude to humble myself and say, you know what, instead of me just liking this guy, let me go deep into some more search and see what this man was really about. And when I got the whole totality of Dr. King, that changed my mind. I said, God, this dude, he knew what was up. He came to his own. He evolved. So that's what I got to say. But I want to hear the sister talk, please. Sorry, sister.
Yeah. Number one, Tulsa, Oklahoma was bombed in 1921. Garvey was arrested in 1922.
Wow.
So what happened before his arrest? So we need to take it in consideration. How could he do something for Tulsa when he was going through his own changes? That's very important. Let's think about the fact that Garvey was on the scene during the early 20th century. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine if Garvey was around during this particular time with social media? Think of the people that followed him during that particular time when not many people had television.
Right.
Some people were didn't have the fortune to even own a radio. But he's able to galvanize people, 6 million people worldwide, with what? Postcards, a newspaper, and nothing else. So let's give him some credit for what he was able to accomplish with the limited number of resources that were available to him then. Can you think of anybody now that has got the same following that he has?
That's right.
Actual following.
That's right.
People are actually contributing. Nowadays you can't get out people that contribute to too much of anything.
Right.
We're into everything that has no value, something that someone else told us should be considered to be valuable.
You were saying something? Let me ask you a question. Yeah, let me ask you a question about that, because from my understanding now, in the way I think the days of leaders is over. I think that those days are over. I think they're gone. They're done and gone. I think the examples that we had in front of us, if we can learn anything from Garvey or anything from King or Malcolm, we have to learn that it's within us, and that's it. We got to learn that it's within yourself from an individual standpoint, and you have to do it yourself. Nobody's going to help us. I mean, no religion's going to help us, no God's going to help us, whatever the case might be. We have to do it for ourselves, because that's the only thing. One thing, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want to see where is that a good assessment of that, sister? Is that a good assessment of that, the fact that do it for ourselves and don't worry about anything else?
Oh, definitely you have to do for ourselves. And we wait for anybody else to do it for us, it isn't going to get done. That's already been proven. And,
right.
We can't rely on just one person to have all that we need. We need to look at the solutions that various people have put forward as the way that we're going to come out of our situation. I think that's very, very important.
Yeah.
And can I say something right quick? I just wanted to say that even when we look at any bodies or government, anything that functions, pretty much have this process of hierarchy. You understand? You have roles and process, even in your own body. You understand? Everything isn't key to function as the next thing is. You understand? And I think that we all should be encouraging this leadership. We all should be teachers. But at the same time, we should be promoting and encouraging those that are teachers as well. This is the political thing I think we have an issue with. Because when we talk about power, when we talk about having a political figure, that's not saying that you can't talk and that you can't say and express these same issues. It's the fact that you are going to promote and rally behind someone that is going to say the same thing that you're saying, a reflection of who and what you are. This is what you had in the tribal essence, even when we're talking about in military or having an army. You understand? Everybody isn't the general. You feel me? That's why those that support, they are going to salute and they are going to respect the leadership. And normally the leadership is going to come from that of the ancestors or that of the ways of yesterday. You understand? When it's not, that's when we will become to be black people or Africans fighting in the army for crackers that don't give a damn about us, and then we come back in the same place that we done fought for. Now they killing us in our back. But when we put our lives on the line for something, with us being able to respect and know what true leadership is, hopefully we're going to follow the oath. We're going to put our life on the line for something that is going to be integral to who we really are, something that's going to be integral to our ancestors in the yesterday, something that's going to be integral to our come up. And America has never been, just like you said, you guys said it earlier, they never been encouraged or inspired to help promote the come come up of the black person or the African. Because when they start to have that conversation, guess what? They have to start talking about reparations and repairing the stuff that they fucked up. We know this. So even when we're talking about having leaders, of course, this is a conversation that we have to have because we have to fit that model in our families and also communities. We have to be leaders, and also we have to know when to be followers. We got what they say, you got too many chiefs and not enough Indians. We got to have Indians as well. We got to be students, and we have to be teachers. You feel me? Everybody can't be a teacher. So it's important to know when we have had, and I want to appreciate you, sis, for giving and rendering to us quality, substantial learning for us as Africans. Not just European education, but when you're giving us an African worldview. I want to appreciate you and thank you. Every time you come to the show, you are very substantial. I want to thank the brother Gary. And like I said, this is the thing that is key. Whenever we have the debate going back and forth about Marcus Garvey, or we always have those scholars that are in support of those figures like Marcus Garvey. The scholars aren't on here saying, well, hey, he was a fraud, and we have an overwhelming amount of evidence that points to him being a danger for black people. They're saying the opposite. So again, when you have Negroes promoting this naysaying, this damaging rhetoric, you only make yourself look like a modern day coon because you're using your energy to speak illy or down talk those black people that have tried to make attempts and efforts to get us out of this system, out of the situation you see us currently in. So that's all I want to say. I want to thank you very much, sis. You do a great job.
Oh, thank you. And with Garvey, I think he's done much more than most.
Right.
He's made a contribution, and 100 years from now, they're still going to be singing his praises, whether some people like him or they don't like him. What he's done for us cannot be denied.
Well,
but let me open his previous line. Hold on, relax, Joshua. Jane, you still there?
Yeah. I was gonna say, so when you open, you should let. I know these guys you disagree with them, but you should give them a chance and let them, as long as they respectful to give.
I open line when I'm ready, JJ. I open
line
when I'm ready.
But don't be biased if we don't agree,
But there's a way to disagree. You can disagree without being disagreeable, and that man, he is disagreeable. And if he had been allowed to talk even longer, he would have started saying negative things about me. And,
right. No, I agree with you saying, sis. That's what I'm saying. If I know that everybody's not going to agree, but they should have their chance as long as it's respectable. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I've had an encounter with him a couple of days ago, and I can't say I'm impressed. And actually, when you get older, and I'm 66 years old at this point. After a while, you don't have tired. Yeah, I'm young at heart. But after a while, you get tired of dealing with people that are not really contributing to the discussion. They're trying to destroy whatever it is that you're trying to build upon. And at that point, I would just hang up. I really don't want to talk to him. Maybe if I was younger, I would try and listen and that sort of stuff. And I can listen to people who don't agree with everything that I say. There's nothing wrong with that. But like I said, it's the way that you do that. And so I don't care to talk to him at all. Period. And maybe they say, oh, that's
and you shouldn't. You shouldn't, because like I said, the brother has a very negative outlook for no reason on the brother Marcus Garvey, and because you are utilizing your education supportive of somebody that he doesn't like, this is where they throw an emotional fit, and therefore, and like I said, I feel the same way that you feel, but I get down and dirty with them. I cuss their ass out, but I can appreciate what you're saying as an elder, and definitely easing on by that stuff, and as you should.
Not to mention, if you're going to mention somebody like a George Washington, you're talking about this man being so great, well, provide the evidence. And he doesn't do that. And then
Sarge
he'll,
is bugged out.
you know, same thing with Garvey. And when he was talking about the boys, he's going based on feelings and beliefs, but he's not giving you any concrete information.
Right.
You know, he doesn't know the subject matter he's talking about. He's trying to make you believe because he's talking loud that what he says is the truth. But anyone who's done a little bit of research would, you know, they wouldn't agree with him at all. They can't agree with him. Anybody who knows anything about George Washington and the information is right there, how could you say he was great? You know, I just don't understand it. So I care not to debate someone who hasn't done the research. Like you and the other young man that was talking, you can tell, you know your stuff. You know what you're talking about. You're very articulate, and I can agree with practically everything that you said. 99.9% of what you said, I agree with. You know, but it's not because you sound good. I know you're articulate. It's not just because of your ability to express yourself. It's because you're saying or you're giving us information based on your research, your reading, and that's what's important, especially when we're dealing with children. Can you imagine someone hearing him talk that's easily persuaded, and just because he's loud, you have some child that would agree with him? Yeah, Marcus Garvey was a Freud, and George Washington was a great man. You could hear some people saying stuff like that just based on hearing him, you know, and he's totally off base. Who wants, you know, we don't need people like that around our children. I wouldn't want him to be an educator, but unfortunately, there are too many teachers in the school systems nowadays who are saying the same sort of thing. Like some man was saying in a school that I taught in that Al Jolson was the greatest jazz singer of all time. And you have kids that are mimicking that. You mean Al Jolson, the man that walked around with blackface, singing songs about Mammy? And you're going to call him the greatest jazz singer of all time? And then the children are going to go and repeat that same information, that false information. That's why we have all the problems that we have now, because everybody and anybody is allowed to teach our children. Like, you know, being here in Philadelphia or on the outskirts of Philadelphia, people were very excited because they instituted a program of African American studies. And so a lot of people said, wow, you know, now our children are going to learn about their history and culture. But it's not that they were Europeans that were teaching our children. It was Europeans who did not know the research. They had not researched. So anything that was written in the book that was written by some European, they just repeated that information, you know, and they were passing on the lies. They continue to pass on the lies.
Right.
And that has to stop. So we shouldn't have people that continue to disseminate false information. They have forfeited their right to speak. You know?
I hope Sarge is listening to this, because this applies to Sarge.
I want to ask you a question, because a lot of times...
Wait, ask a question.
Okay,
Let me go back. Let me go back to these lines. I'm gonna go up and down, and I'm gonna let you ask your question.
Okay.
Who's this? You there, Q? Other people still on the board on this. I guess you must be silent. I'm just checking. All right. I'm gonna try. No, I'll keep it online. All right, go ask your question.
No, I just want to say that.
Wait, Shabazz, hold on. Let me see if Taz's still out there. Let me just check this line. Check. You there still, Taz?
Yeah, man, but you probably don't want to unmute my line, man. You might scare the professor.
No, just be respectful,
I don't scare
man.
very easily.
I wasn't disrespectful the first time. I wasn't disrespectful the first time. He gave me the floor. I was simply speaking on what she had spoken on, and I actually just put it in a factual context. You could Google what I told you and read it from 100.
So you believe everything on Google? If Google said it, it must be correct. But is that Sarge?
No, this is Tab.
Yeah.
I was checking the lines because I muted a bunch of lines. That's why I was checking these lines that I had on the queue that I muted. That's why I was checking them.
Because I don't choose to talk to him at all, really. Like I said, I'm too old for that. So if that's him, I'm gone.
Okay. All right. Now you can ask your question, Shabazz.
No, I just wanted to ask the sister. A lot of times, there is this inner dwelling of certain things, and us as Black people or as Africans, we have known or we've identified with that thing as spirit, and spirit being i.e. character or being persona. How important is it in possessing this with being able to be intuitive or see certain things within people before, time actually reveals it? You understand? And is that something that actually exists within our African people that we've leaned on? Or is it something, is that what we find in the church? Or is there more organic reference or identification related to this?
Well, some people say that the intuitiveness comes from our third eye, where some people make us feel uncomfortable when they speak. Their personas, the way they carry themselves, we know that something ain't right. And I guess you've met, because I know I've met people, and I said, he or she, they ain't right. And you back off from, you don't want to have anything to do with them because they're not emitting the same sort of energy or spiritualness that comes from your own being. So I do believe in that. And I know even in terms of astrology and numerology, they look at some signs or some numbers as being, or people that possess those particular numbers or those particular signs as being more intuitive than other signs or numbers. So I definitely believe in someone being intuitive, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. And I guess that's what I was just asking. I guess the need of us as Black people, it seems like there's a certain naivety that we possess as Black people. Therefore, we can spend our lives with a person, loving a person that don't really love us. We can spend time going over spending money with the person that's robbing us. It seems like because we don't have this thing that is alerting us, hey, this is a danger, or this certain level of intuition, you know what I'm saying, where we're seeing what's around the corner. We only allow ourselves to get busted in the head yesterday, and here we are again. Basically, we aren't dealing with evolved situations. We're still dealing with the same situation. The same revolutionary speeches that people are giving today almost sounds just like the ones we heard during Malcolm X's time. Police brutality, educate. All of this stuff is the stuff that we still see. So I'm wondering, is this tied into the yesterday, or us forgetting about that spirit of yesterday, or having that inner dwelling is the reason why we are not fit for a substantial come up, or why we are not evolving or progressing?
Right, because we've been taught that clothes make the man. So if you're wearing a Versace suit or whatever the clothing that's supposed to be the best thing, if they're wearing that thing, then we believe what's coming out of their mouths. So we no longer judge people based on our intuitive eye, our third eye. We look at what European people have told us is the measure of a man or the measure of a woman, and it's usually based on, the way their hair is combed, what they're wearing, the type of shoes they're wearing. So we're looking at all the wrong things instead of really examining what's coming out of their mouths. I think that's really what the problem is. There was something else I was going to say. I can't even remember what it is, but it, we have our eyes are not open, our eyes are closed because we're looking at the criteria that we're using to judge people has changed, and somehow or another we have to get back on track and look at issues a little bit differently than we look at them now.
All right, I got a new caller. Let me open this line. All once, man. Ask who I'm speaking to.
Hey, how you doing?
Hello. Who is Alquan?
Yeah. Is it possible I can speak, or do I have to be confined to certain types of questions or interests? Or?
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I really want to hear my man Taz, but let me ask you, Dr. Ogunleye. Can you explain? Oh, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. Can you explain to us exactly what your origins are in regards to your profession and what you do as far as doing the talk show circuit, how you got started, and what is the main goal?
Okay. Well, I'm married to an African man. He's a Yoruba, but I am not from Africa. I am from here. My father told me years ago that we were not from Africa. We were from right here in what we call the United States of America. My mother is also from here. I am an African, what do you call it? I am autochthonous woman. I should put that. I'm not an African. I was born and raised on Long Island in New York, although being a New Yorker,
No, Alquan's born in New York as well. Continue.
Okay, being from New York, I was still raised as if my mother and father were living in the South. So I am a Geechee, Yamasi woman, and I was raised as such. A cousin of mine said that she didn't know the right word, so she said that we were Cherokee. And I cannot say the word right, but I'm going to try and say it anyway, Anuia people. So I'm a combination of various autochthonous people. I think I have one relative that was from what we now call Ghana, and I don't know that to be sure. I'm just looking at some of the artifacts that were kept in our family, but for the most part, we were indigenous to this particular landmass. I have been teaching African American studies or African studies since the late 60s. Gotten a lot of trouble teaching. I've taught on the university level, the high school level, and the junior high level. I've even taught a few kids in elementary school. I taught 1 year in elementary school in Philadelphia. I got started because I just got tired of seeing all the negative images of our people and knowing that the information that we were being given was not factual. In terms of the book that I wrote, I first wrote a screenplay about the Gullah Geechee people, was advised that I should write a book about the Gullah Geechee people in order to get people interested in helping to support my movie for about the Gullah Geechee wars that were fought by our people against the United States Corporation. That was not the first time that I wrote. I've been writing for quite some time. You can go to JSTOR if you know anything about JSTOR, Journal of Black Studies, and you can read several articles that I wrote. Wrote one about Marcus Garvey, and read some of the articles that I've written. I also have two other books. One was called The African Roots of Jumping the Broom. Another book is called African American Names and Our Meanings, which I think is very important. I got together with students that were working with me from the University of Arizona, wrote a book about the names that melanated women give to their children, because a lot of people laugh at those names and they call them ghetto names. I don't think that they're ghetto names. Felt that the only reason why the women were wrong or had not gone had done all they could in terms of giving those children those names, they forgot to give those names a meaning. And so I sat down using various dictionaries from the continent of Africa, and I gave meanings to those names. Now, some people have laughed at that, told me that I didn't know what I was talking about. And the names.
Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but we're kind of running short on time. Let me just fast forward a second here. What is the end goal? Because we had people like Dick Gregory, the Phil Valentines of the world, and all these other individuals, and they say a lot, but I'm not really sure what the end game is with a lot of these people. So, I want to know what's your end game? If you're not teaching at a university, what's the end game?
See us become autonomous, to do for self, to become the people that we were meant to be. That's the end game. Now, I have a lot of respect for Phil Valentine. He's helped me in ways that I haven't seen many other people provide help, so I have nothing negative to say about Phil Valentine. I would listen to Dick Gregory, but I never met Dick Gregory, didn't know anything about him, so I can't say what the end game was for Dick Gregory. He has passed away, but I know with Phil Valentine, in my estimation, his end game is to make sure that we were armed with the right information to help us become an autonomous people. Now,
Phil Valentine, that's the guy who said that Barack Obama was Malcolm X's son. So I don't know what kind of education that was.
He might know something that we don't know.
I don't know how he knew it. Maybe
it's
some taking hallucinogens or something, but you might know it.
Well, there's so much that we don't know, and that might be information that sometime later in the future, people begin to say, that man was right. Barack Obama was Malcolm X's son.
But we know that's not right
really
because, even he
had
to
right.
backtrack from that.
I can say he didn't do his information. Before I go on to the next question,
because since you were talking about Valentine, before we go on to the next question, what's your opinion on D.R. York?
Who? I didn't know anything about York.
The white York, D.R. York.
You mean?
Yeah, Malachi York, D.R. York.
I didn't know anything about him. I had people during where I used to dance with Olatunji. I had one woman that I danced with, and she was a member of his organization, but we never really talked about it. We were too busy rehearsing for our shows. So I can't tell you anything about York. I've heard all the negative information about him, people calling him a homosexual and a pedophile. I don't know.
Oh yeah, he did.
True.
He did confess that in court, and that is on video.
Oh, I don't know anything. I knew nothing about the court trial during that particular time.
Next question, Alquan. Next question.
Okay, the next question is.
But can I say this? You're not going to get me to say anything negative about Phil Valentine. I have a lot of respect for him because I know a lot of the people who told me that they were going to help me, and then when it came time to help, they didn't help me. They tried to destroy me. They lied, and made me believe that they were going to be there for me, and they weren't. They deceived me. But Philip Valentine never did that to me. So you can't make me say anything negative about him.
Oh, no, I'm not trying to make you say anything negative about anything.
For him
I only want to hear what's on your mind. You know, that's all I want to hear tonight. But what are your feelings about Black Americans, not any other kind of people in education? Because you have a PhD, so, you know, I noticed a lot of people who are out here with PhDs in education, they don't really tell Black people, hey, go get a college degree like I got one. Instead, they like to tell us how to live our lives, what we should be thinking, that we should like Marcus Garvey, we should like this guy, we should eat this way, but we don't. You never tell us to go to school. What's your views and opinions on that?
Well, number one, you can like whoever you want. I'm not going to tell anybody to like or dislike anybody, but I don't have to listen to you if you like someone and I don't like that particular individual. You know, like if you tell me you like John McCain, I have a personal experience with that bastard, and he's dead, and it doesn't mean anything to me, you know, because he tried to hurt me. So if you tell me he was a great man, I think I might stay my distance from you.
Oh, your man Sarge will say he was a great man.
Say what?
Your man Sarge.
I don't even know him.
Oh, because you requested him. You asked it for earlier caller with Sarge. That's why I was saying that.
Oh, okay. But I don't wish him bad luck in any way, but I wouldn't spend any time talking with him because I think it would be futile. Now, you said something else. I'm trying to remember what else you said.
No, I was saying about education.
You were asking me. Oh, you know why I don't support education? Because it's not for everybody. And
but for those,
if that's your aptitude and you should go to school. But everybody cannot go to college. They can't. What about plumbing and people dealing with electricity and
but what about
all
those
the
who
other
can go to
things
college or should or want to?
Well, you know that they're not as many as we think that they are, and we have adopted that idea.
Now, are you saying that because these are Black people or because of people in general?
Well, there's people in general, but I don't really care about them. I'm talking about our people. All of us don't need to go to school, go to college. And if you go to any school across this or across this country where melanated children are being educated, they're all being told that they need to go to college. And they don't. Listen, I have a son who is an electrician, all right? When he first started going to school, and that was my husband's idea, he would go somewhere and sit in the car and stay there or whatever he was doing until he figured it was time that the right time for him to be home after his classes, and he would come back home. After a while, we began to realize he wasn't going to school. He wasn't taking any of the classes. And we put him in a program to become an electrician. He's a fantastic electrician now. At one time, he had his own company. I think he just knows how to deal with our people because a lot of them are trying to get something for nothing. Okay, so he has to learn how to deal with them and not become angry. But he's an excellent electrician. College is not for everybody. And mind you, my son is not a dummy by any stretch of the imagination. You know, the man, he was doing calculus and trigonometry and you name it. He can do it with no problem whatsoever. But college was not for him. And if we had everybody going to college, what about the trades, building houses, cleaning up the water? Yeah, all the things that we are lacking in. Right.
Yes, sir.
You got Mexicans coming here, and they're taking all the jobs that we should have.
And Black people
because we
can't
haven't
find
been
work.
told how to anything about the building trade.
Yeah.
You know, so how about teaching that in school? You know, so no, going to college is not for everybody. We all need to be educated. But what type of education are you receiving? Are you receiving an education that's going to make you self-sufficient? Something else. Can you pass on a degree from one generation to the next? No, you can't.
Nope. No, you can't.
Okay.
You got to go back and start over and get. And you know how the cycle goes. Now, Doctor.
It's not for everybody.
Doctor, you say right there. I'm gonna open this last call and we have to close out because the show's gonna cut out in like 5 minutes. All ones, who's this?
You know who it is. I'm the one whose name shall not be mentioned.
I'm sorry. Sorry, sir. You're too late. You called in and while the show's going to end. Bring your black ass or your white ass, whatever you want to call it, on a conference call because this show's going to cut off and we're not going to deal with your bullshit right now. Let me open that Alcon. You get what she said?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So she said, so she said college is not for everyone, but then why did you go and how come you don't encourage that, but you'll encourage Pan-Africanism and all these other what I might characterize as wacko teachings?
You know what? Pan-Africanism has changed. At one time, we all had issues. We still have those same issues. But you know what? The most despised people in the whole world are melanated people from the United States. Nobody cares for us. The Africans don't care for us. The people in the Caribbean don't care for us. The people worldwide, they have no respect for us. That when they need help, they all come running. But we are the most despised people worldwide. So, no, I'm not into Pan-Africanism anymore. And let me tell you something. Married to an African, I've listened to people in his family, and they have negative things to say about me because I'm not from Africa. So they don't want anything to do with me. Maybe when they want something, they want to have something to do with me, but they don't have any respect for me. They look at me like I'm dirt. And if they don't look at me like I'm dirt, they think of me as being an anomaly, that I'm different from them. Like one of them was so surprised to see so many books in my house. I have over 3,000 books in my home. And the first thing she said was, one of his relatives was, she couldn't have possibly read all those books. The nerve. Just because when you go to Africa, you might see bookstores that do nothing but teach, the curriculum, but they don't have any other books for the most part. You're not going to go to their homes and see books.
I tell you what they have in African home. I tell you, in most African homes, I'd say one thing they might have. There you go. And we're going to leave it on that note. For people to catch the readings of this great book, get the Kindle on Amazon. And thank you again, Dr. Sabi. And we're going to have another session next month.
Right. Or go to Jake's store and read the things that I've written. Read the articles that I've written.
Yes, and that too.
You know, I have chapters. I have a chapter in a book. Go and read that. The role of women in ancient West Africa. There's so many things you could read that I've written. Go and buy my book.
Okay.
The Unconquered.
All right. Yes.
The Yamasi and Gullah Geechee Wars.
Yes.
You can read it for free on Amazon. Yes.
All right, thank you. Thanks for everybody. Hold on. You get that, Alquan? Now, Alquan.
Yeah. One last real quick question.
No, you can't right now, sir. The conference call is now on. For everybody that wants to continue more conversation on what is said tonight, bring y'all black asses over to the conference call. I'll give y'all a number since to be nice. 712-770-4160. Access code 915-411#. Thank you, Ogunleyemc, for tonight's session. And for all those that enjoyed tonight's session, till next time, good night.
Good night.